This is the house where my earliest memories of life begin. It's also where my parents' marriage and our family began to fall apart. It was a sunny day in the summer of 1970 when the Cuyahoga County Sheriff showed up at our door to evict us from our home. I was only 4 years old at the time, and my sister made it seem like she, myself, Mom, Dad, and my brother were all just camping in my dad's white 1965 Ford Galaxy. It didn't occur to me that we were homeless until many years later. But how did we get here? How does a family end up living in the street? To answer that question, I've got to take you back in time. But before I do that, I've got to answer two very important questions for each and every one of you. Who am I? And why should you care? Honestly, I'm no one at all. I don't have a fancy degree from an Ivy League school. I don't have a #1 song in the Billboard charts. I've never been on Oprah or Dr. Phil. My claim to fame? I'm one of 8 million Americans who was raised by one or both parents who were alcoholics. Hi, my name is Pete. And this is my story of being raised by two alcoholic parents. I'm 56 years old, and I'm the youngest of 4, but I really consider myself to be an only child. That's because by the time I was 9, all 3 of my older siblings had moved out of the house and gone on to other things. I wanted to make this film because I've grown tired of the stigma that people like myself who are raised in dysfunctional families carry with us, the baggage we carry with us that we're not allowed to talk about. You're either told at a very young age not to talk about your parents' addiction, or it's understood you don't talk about it. My dad's addiction to alcohol was so severe that it was very similar to him being a heroin addict. And there was nothing that would stand between him and his next drink. Despite everything, I was a good kid growing up. I had friends and I never got into trouble. The effects of what I experienced at home didn't start to emerge in my personality until I started dating when I was a teenager in high school. If a girl showed me the slightest bit of attention, I'd fall madly in love. If someone broke up with me, I'd be devastated. In college, things got even worse, especially when it came to dating. Women I should have never gone out with, I pursued. As I look back on it now, I was needy, paranoid, had fear of abandonment and trust issues, and suffered from depression. These are just some of the many residual side effects from being raised in an alcoholic home. The alcoholic's disease permeates the entire family. No one escapes without being damaged in some way, shape, or form. When World War II came to an end, Dad was 21 years old when he was honorably discharged from the United States Army Air Corps, where he had served as a waist gunner in a B-17. After the war, he moved back to his hometown of Cambridge, Ohio, and lived with his parents before attending Ohio University in the fall of 1946. Mom was 17 years old and a junior at Cleveland Heights High School. She lived with her parents, her sister Mary, and their dog Nuisance. She also had plans to attend Ohio University in the fall of 1946. My parents' paths crossed for the first time on one fateful day in 1947 on the front steps of Cutler Hall located on the main campus of Ohio University. I got in my car in one sunny morning and drove to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio. That's where my mom and dad met in the late 1940s. It's where I went to college. Both of my brothers and my sister went there. Most of their kids got their degrees there, and I even had an uncle that attended in the late 1940s. So there's a lot of good memories for me at Ohio University. But there's a lot of ghosts that walk that campus too.
send you a love song to say how I feel for you. Try me a lullaby, the light of the silvery moon.
There's a lot of ghosts on this entire campus. There's a lot of ghosts in this hotel. A lot of memories. This hotel is where my family always stayed when we came to High University to visit my siblings. Both my brothers, two older brothers and my older sister went to school here, and we would always drive down here and stay in this hotel. But here I am, I'm in Athens, Ohio. I'm at the Ohio University Inn. It's a beautiful sunny day. There's lots of memories here, lots of ghosts. Lots of ghosts.
Will somebody help me through the night? Well, I'm singing love songs, but you just don't see the light.
This is Ohio University. This is where it all started. Cutler Hall behind me is where my parents met. They met on the steps of Cutler Hall back in the 1940s. Back then, this was the office for the College of Fine Arts. And my mom was a fine arts major. My dad was a journalism major. And I'm guessing that mom was coming out of here meeting with an academic advisor, perhaps even having an art class. And I guess they bumped into each other. I wonder what cheesy line my dad used to get her to talk to him, you know. Pardon me, did it hurt when you fell from heaven? Hey, can I have your phone number? Because I've lost mine. I wonder what he said. I'd love to know what he said to her, you know. But that's where it all began. That's where their life came together. That's where fate took over. And they became a thing, an item.
Mom and Dad got married on September 10th, 1949. Afterwards, they lived off campus so Dad could finish school. He graduated in June of 1950 with a degree in journalism. After graduation, they moved to my mother's hometown of Cleveland Heights, Ohio. Dad got a job selling advertising for the Cleveland Press. Once they were established, they bought a house and started a family. My three older siblings were born between 1950 and 1957. Then, after more than 8 years since the birth of their last child, on October 23, 1965, at 4:33 in the morning, I was born. Behind the 8 ball from the very start, weighing in at only 4 pounds 9.5 ounces, there I was, a preemie, born into what I now refer to as Hurricane Nancy and Harry. I spent the first several weeks of my life in an incubator until I gained enough weight to be sent home. Mom said the day I was born, Dad was home drunk out of his mind. I'm not sure how I got home once they finally decided to release me. The doctor probably put me in the taxi and sent me on my way. From 1950 until 1968, Dad sold advertising for the Cleveland Press, one of 2 local newspapers in Cleveland. Just like on the hit TV show Mad Men, he smoked Lucky Strikes and kept a bottle of whiskey at his desk, as did all the men who worked alongside him. Rubbing elbows with clients over a 3-martini lunch at local cocktail lounges and burlesque clubs was the norm. Mom said Dad was very well liked by his clients and his boss. She told me his boss actually cried the day he had to fire him. From that day forward, his drinking escalated and his life went spiraling out of control, and he took all of us right along with him. I guess my dad had been known to skip a day or 2 of work or skip client meetings to go sit in the park and drink booze. I don't know what the official story is. All I know is it was 1968. My dad had 4 kids at home and a wife and a mortgage, and he was out of a job. My dad got a job in advertising at a smaller newspaper in a separate county, and he lost that job by like 1970. We had moved into this big house, this big colonial house built probably in the early 1920s. It was dark and shadowy inside. I remember it as being very dusty and drafty. When we lived in this house, we didn't have any food. I didn't know why. I was 3 years old in 1968. By 1969, 1970, I was 4, almost 5. And I just remember my mom would feed me buttered crackers for lunch. That's all we had for lunch. And we'd go out into the living room and we'd sit on this old tattered Oriental rug. It was this maroon and gold, tattered maroon and gold Oriental rug. And it was filthy. It was just dirty and dusty. And we'd sit on it and she'd bring out a plate of saltine crackers with butter and jelly on them. And that was my lunch. That's all we had. I very, very much remember that. I remember how hungry I was all the time. I remember going to bed in this house, being so hungry I would dream about food. I remember one time I dreamed, and I still remember this dream. I was 4 years old, 3 or 4 years old. And I remember that I was in the dark. It was completely dark in this dream. And all of a sudden, at about this height in the dream, this hamburger just appeared. This big, juicy hamburger with a bun and lettuce and tomato and ketchup and everything. And I was so hungry, and I reached out to grab it, to eat it. I was like, oh, I'm going to eat. And the hamburger disappeared. It just faded away. And I woke up crying.